As in other states around the country, political leaders from different parties in Massachusetts are finding common ground on criminal justice reform. That was the case when Governor Baker joined leaders of the House and Senate in calling for new steps to reduce the number of offenders going back to prison. But reform advocates say the state should also look at other remedies, from changes in mandatory sentencing to policy around fees and access to criminal records. Our guest is one of those advocates, an organizer with the Mass Community Action Network, Ricardo Henry. Thank you very much for being with us, Ricardo.
Hi, no problem.
I want to ask you, first of all, about putting this into perspective, because all these figures out there, they say that we don't really have a very big incarceration problem compared with other states, but we've got all this recidivism, the people who keep going back. So what's the first thing in your mind about doing something about that?
First thing would be to mandatory minimums. It's you know, it affects the communities, especially communities of color. We want to actually put enough power in the judge's hand where he can redirect certain felons to, let's say, drug treatment for drug offenses, first-time offenses. We have too many people that are being arrested and incarcerated under the mandatory minimums. We don't think it works.
Now what I heard from, especially more from the governor, it was a certain reluctance to get rid of mandatory minimums, but he might like to tailor them so that you somehow can phase in more rehabilitation and other services going on.
Right, I think so too. The CSG report just came back, and I think they're doing a lot of work around the tail end of incarceration. My organization is basically focused on before sentencing, during prison, and then after. So we're trying to, you know, too many people, mass incarceration, too many people are getting arrested. And like you mentioned earlier, recidivism rates are high, although the crime rates are low. So like you said earlier, the same people are going back to prison all the time. So we're trying to look at programs that can prevent that, like people who are incarcerated with nonviolent crimes. If you have a release date, then it should be mandatory for you to get into a pre-release program that's going to continue on the outside, which could probably lead to repealing the CORI, a person coming home without a CORI, because that follows you for a very long time.
Another thing about mandatory sentencing, I think DAs often say they like it because it gives them leverage. Maybe they can make a defendant plead to a lesser charge because they're afraid of getting that mandatory. But talk about the fairness of that.
Yeah, you know, the plea deals, we don't like the plea deals either. You know, sometimes, obviously, people take a plea deal because they're afraid and they don't know what kind of lawyer they're going to get, what kind of services they're going to get. They know it might be a case where they know they're innocent, but they want to plea anyway because the time that they're looking at towards the time that they'll get with a plea deal is much less. So a lot of people do plea deals because it seems like less time, but it doesn't always work out. I mean, sometimes people go ahead and take a trial, and you know, if you can afford a decent lawyer, then you get off, or you know, or not. But we find that most of the time plea deals don't work.
This is BNN News, and we're talking with Ricardo Henry from the Mass Community Action Network. Ricardo, I want to come back to the law around access to criminal record information, the CORI law. There are young people who are also campaigning for job opportunities. They want summer jobs, but you know, they know people who might have CORI problems. What needs to be changed with that?
Juvenile expungement, that's one of the things we're asking for. We're asking for it to be at age 18, like to be expunged at age 18 instead of 21. You know, it follows these kids around. You know, sometimes people make mistakes, first-time offense, and then, you know, you have that following you around for the rest of your life. If we can do expungement at 18 with a program, of course, that has to be completed, then a person wouldn't have that to follow them around. It's really difficult to get a job with a CORI. There are very few CORI-friendly employers out there.
Now, one of the other problems, I think this has been going on for years with CORI, is that when an employer looks at a record, sometimes it's not clear whether somebody has been convicted, if they've just been arrested maybe.
Right.
And I guess that is a cloud behind the cloud.
It is a cloud, because a lot of people think that if, let's say, you're arrested and you've been charged for a crime, but you haven't been convicted, that when you come home, or when we come home from court after that case, that there's no query. But that's not true. There is a query that has to be cleared by the judge. So we wanted to make it mandatory that these queries are cleared automatically and immediately after a trial.
Because one other issue out there is the difference between a felony and a misdemeanor. We know a felony is a lot worse.
Yes.
And for the crime of larceny, which is basically stealing property,
Right.
I guess we haven't raised the ceiling in quite a while.
No, it's been, I think, $250 for maybe 15 or so years.
You can't even buy a cell phone for $250.
You can't. So we're trying to raise that threshold to $1,500, which makes a lot of sense.
But what about other states? Because I've seen, even in a red state like Florida, I've seen liberal Democrats and very conservative Republicans. They're trying to get rid of mandatory sentencing. And
Yes.
I mean, what about Massachusetts? Can't they do that here too?
We are trying. We are working diligently to try to make it go away. It's a little difficult, the politics in Massachusetts. I think with the community effort and getting as many people involved as we can to say the same thing, let's repeal mandatory minimums, I think eventually we can get it done.
We should mention to people who want to get some more information about the campaign and some more of the details in the agenda. Is there a place they can check that out?
Yes, MCAN, which stands for Massachusetts Communities Action Network. There's a Facebook page, and you can go to the website, mcan.com.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Oh, thank you.
Ricardo Henry from MCAN.
Thank you.
We'll have more news in just a moment.